think that traditional wellness, the way that I learned about it was sort of like movement, nutrition, sleep. And those are things that are all so fundamentally important to wellness, I truly believe. But when I work with people and when I think about my own wellness, I think mind, body, heart. And how can you connect those things and really focus on wellness from within? And those other things, like what we eat and how we sleep and how we move, are almost secondary to what you think in your mind and what you're telling yourself. So there's a lot of what I consider holistic wellness to be internal and to be focusing on that inner wellness journey and the self-talk and the belief system and feeling our feelings and all of that. So I think there's, it's all pieces of the pie, if you will.
Welcome to the House of Germar podcast, where wellness starts within. The House of Germar is a lifestyle brand, empowering women to live all in through interior design and personal wellness. We are a destination for women ready to reimagine what is possible in their homes and lives, and then create it. We are honored to have you join us on our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. I am your host, Jean Collins, and I invite you to become inspired by this week's guest. Welcome to the House of Germar podcast, where wellness starts within. I'm your host, Jean Collins, and today we are going to talk about joy. I love this subject. We have Julie Vincent on the show. She's a mindset and wellness coach, and she has a website that's called Clear Space for Joy, everybody. And I am so excited to have her on the show. So, Julie, welcome to the House of Germar podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to share. Your journey is so inspiring and your story and what you do. And I love to share with people how I know my guests, because some of my guests I've met before. And you and I connected at an event that I went to. It was a business socialista event. It was a Shark Tank event. And I personally am not the kind of person who loves going to an event where there are 200 people that I don't know. But I made myself go because I thought, there are entrepreneurs there. I might meet someone. So I went with the goal of meeting one new person. And you were my one new person. And we were sitting next to each other, and they made us do an exercise of talking to the person next to us, which I always hate. But I was so happy that I did, because we have this huge connection about mindset, and our business goals are so similar. So I was so happy that we met, and we have since met and talked about many things. So I am just so excited that you're willing to spend some time to be on the show. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. And I'm so glad you met in that way. I feel like it was really special. We had to do a visualization exercise and share kind of very personally what we wanted to visualize in our future. And we had a really awesome connection immediately through that conversation. We kind of both wanted to be similar things.
We did. It was very cool. And also, for the people that are seeing this, just so you know, Julie's got this crazy cool thing going on her iPad where it's following her. So she's going to zoom in and out. And just so you know, she's meant to do that. That's how this is going to roll today. Because you know what? This is real life, everybody. Technology doesn't always work with us. Your story, your career, how you got into wellness and mindset, I think is so interesting. So would you mind sharing with the guests your background and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. I wish I could tell you that there's some sort of path that I could, share about how I made it to where I am. But it's one of those things where you can look backwards and connect the dots, but forwards, there would be no way to do it. I think it all started, though, with the fact that I wasn't feeling that well in my early 20s. I had gone to college, graduated, and had a degree in public relations, but wasn't quite sure how to go about making that into a career. And I was a little bit all over the place with what I wanted to do with my life. And I ended up going into PR and marketing, made a big move out to California with some friends, which was a wonderful place to live and really inspired me down some of the paths that I now live in the wellness world. But I think really it came down to the fact that I was working super hard. I had grown up with the belief system that, success equals money and really feeling like you've made it as far as you can in your career. And I did that and got to a certain place and really just wasn't feeling great, I think, in my body and in my mind. And so I really took the time outside of my work to, try to get into a better place of feeling well. And I went on a journey through, practicing yoga. It was something at the time that was new to me over 20 years ago. Living in California and going to some of these amazing yoga studios and meeting people that taught me that kind of way of life. And that really helped me to deal with some of the stresses and the anxiety that I was having in my mind through my career. And I think over time, I ended up moving to New York City with my now husband and was still working, insane hours and trying to, go up the corporate ladder, but decided that there was something I could do with yoga. So I took a yoga teacher training in New York City. And that was sort of where the biggest shift came in my career, where it wasn't, after the 3-month period, it wasn't like, oh, I definitely just want to be a yoga teacher, but I knew that I wanted to do something in the wellness world. And that had completely opened my mind to spirituality and, how can I potentially leverage my experience or my education with this new world that made me feel well. So I took a turn and really built a wellness career in the corporate world and started doing corporate wellness for a big global consulting firm. And I built a wellness program from the ground up. And that was really exciting. But still, I was in corporate America and getting a lot of that red tape feeling and, working for someone else. And
Right.
so, long story short, I ended up having my first child, my son, and realized that not only were we going to move outside the city into the suburbs of Connecticut, but that I also wanted to transition out of corporate America. And I took a little time to spend, with him and be a stay-at-home mom. And I loved that and I hated it at the same time. And I knew that I wanted to do something else besides just being a mom. But I wanted the flexibility of being a mom and being there for all of those special moments, right?
Right.
So I decided to start my own business. And that's when I went back to school. I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and studied holistic wellness and nutrition. And I graduated the day before my daughter was born.
Ah,
So
which
that's
is
how I
amazing.
that's how I really got into wellness in general. And then the mindset piece of it really has more to do with my own personal journey and challenges, which, were everything from a traumatic birth with my daughter, things going on inside my family of origin, and also a hip replacement that I had to get at 41 years old. And all of those things sort of added up to really, really big challenges in my life that forced some surrender and, really gave me the gift of presence and understanding what I needed for my mind, body, and heart. And I think now I have come to a conclusion that there's, certain things in my life that are, non negotiables.
Yes.
And those are my secrets to wellness. And I want to share that with others. So that's where the mindset piece comes in.
Ugh, which I love. I always feel like people's experience adds so much and you
Mm.
learn so much. And, when I learned about you and went to your website and I was like, this woman had a hip replacement at 41. Are you kidding? And I know you had challenges with your daughter. And I just looked at all of that and I was like, to me, that's like stress, right? Little people, little babies, and having to have a hip replacement and trying to have a career and trying to have a business. All of this is, I was like, this is just stress. And when I met you, it was so interesting because, and you just used this word, surrender. And so, talk to me about the word surrender because it was, you used it when I met with you. And I was like, that's such a powerful word that I don't think we normally talk about. So, talk about surrender and how did you get to that point and what does that mean for you?
Oh, it's giving me the chills thinking about it. I think that
Mm,
memories come up when I think of the word surrender, right?
mm,
Traumas come up when I think of the word surrender. I think for me personally, it was, these really big challenges that forced me to feel all the feelings that maybe I'd been shoving down for a while or to question some of my beliefs that I was raised with or that society had led me to believe. And I think that surrender for me meant like a big questioning of like, all right, it's an unraveling, it's an unlearning, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that that's what happened. In particular with my hip replacement, I was forced to literally sideline myself on my couch for weeks on end. And the world was swirling around me. It was this time actually a little over 2 years ago. And it was the holidays and the shopping and the hustle and the bustle and all the social events and things were all happening. And I was sitting on my couch recovering and I literally could hardly move. Right. And
Yeah.
so I was forced to surrender and have people take care of my kids, have people shop for my gifts, have people, do everything for me, make food, you know?
Right.
And that was like a universe saying, you need to stop. You have to stop. And I'm going to force you to think about what truly matters.
Yes.
And I think that that shifted so much for me. It was a complete life changing event. It was a difficult thing to do because I was forced to feel all the feelings and to have, all of it bubble up to the surface.
Yeah.
But the blessing in that was that I was able to skim away the things that didn't feel necessary, and I was able to say yes to the things that were a heck yes and no to the things that just didn't feel good anymore.
Right. And you were able to build a completely different life for yourself and a
Yes.
different career for yourself as
And my
well.
family. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And you do have a lot of balance because I follow you on Instagram and I'm going to post that at the end for everybody. And you do. I mean, you have kids, you're a mom, you're doing all the mom things, but you're also doing all the small business owner things as
Yeah.
well and getting yourself out there and having to network and
Mhm.
coaching and you're busy. There's a lot going on,
Yeah.
but I do notice you also post about, going for a walk and the
Yep.
importance of that balance and wellness for yourself. So you're really living that life.
Yeah, I think that that's like foundational to the way that I live now. And that is, I think, fortunate enough, I learned through my hip replacement, like the importance of the body and having appreciation for the body and all that it's giving you and taking care of it. I mean, before my hip replacement, I had, incredible pain and my body was screaming to stop. And I was pushing through and sort of like, just saying, I don't have time for this. Right.
Right.
But
Right.
at some point, it's going to get so bad that you have to stop and say, and so hopefully nobody that's listening to this has to get to that level of pain. Right. But when we get these whispers of feelings in our body, like, what is that telling you? Maybe it's whispering, go for a walk. Maybe it's
Right.
whispering, do 20 minutes of yoga. Maybe it's whispering, take a break and do nothing,
Yeah.
And so those are the things that I try to live on a daily basis.
Oh. Holistic wellness. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Sure.
Because you mentioned holistic wellness. It's in your bio, it's on your website. So, what does holistic wellness look like in your life and for the people that you coach?
Yeah. I think it's a lot of what we just talked about. I think that traditional wellness, the way that I learned about it was sort of like movement, nutrition, sleep. And those are things that are all so fundamentally important to wellness, I truly believe. But when I work with people and when I think about my own wellness, I think mind, body, heart. And how can you connect those things and really focus on wellness from within? And those other things, like what we eat and how we sleep and how we move, are almost secondary to what you think in your mind and what you're telling yourself. So there's a lot of what I consider holistic wellness to be internal,
Yeah.
and to be focusing on that inner wellness journey and the self talk and the belief system and feeling our feelings and all of that. So I think there's, it's all pieces of the pie, as if you will, and it shifts and it's not something that is stagnant. It's dynamic and it will always be changing based off of what is happening in your life. And that's another way to think about it too.
Right. It's not a destination.
No.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is when we first met, I was like, oh, I have this company. It's called House of Germar. Wellness starts within, it's within yourself, within your environment. And you're like, oh my goodness, that's like the tagline on my website too. Like it all starts within. And I was like,
Yeah,
yes, you are like my soul person. Yes.
totally.
It really It really does. And getting people to recognize you can eat healthy and you can exercise like crazy, but if you don't take care of the inner work, and I love how you include heart in that conversation because
Yeah.
a lot of times we're mind, body, spirit, and I talk about mind, body, spirit all the time, but you include heart, which is interesting. How did you start to include heart into that narrative?
Well, I think love is the foundation for wellness, right? And joy, if you know anything about what I do.
Yes.
And I think that that comes from the heart, So I think it's a big piece of the pie. If we don't involve our heart in the conversation about wellness, then what are we like? What is that really, right? It's not connected to anything. It's not
Right.
connected to what makes you feel good. It's probably something external, like what you've been told or, what you've learned over time or, had access to. So I think, including the heart in the conversation is so important because if we just only, use our minds and think, or only think about our body, then we're really not connected to what matters to us. And that's
Right.
foundational for our happiness.
Right. Sure. And I love that you use the word joy. So let's talk about your business name, right? And your website, Clear Space for Joy. And I love the word joy because I think to me personally, people talk about happiness. And I always talk about like happiness shouldn't be your goal, right?
Mhm.
Because I always feel like I talk about inner peace and that to me is a more purposeful goal to have inner peace because life is not always going to be happy. I mean, stuff happens. This is life. And so you can be living your best life and still have trauma and tragedy and bad days and troubles. And it's all about how are you going to process those events in any given point in time. So I talk about inner peace and you use joy as your word, which I absolutely love. So how did you come up with what your business is going to be about, your business name, your business mission, your vision? How did that come to life for you?
So previously my business name was Hearth Wellness. And that's when I started out, it was all about like hearth being the center of the home and me working with moms to help them really focus on their wellness. And over time, I think given all the things that happened in my life that we discussed, I just sort of grew it to be beyond just moms and also to think about, this key ingredient that I had discovered through my own personal wellness journey, which is joy. And like I said, laying on the couch, like, how can I feel good in this
Right.
moment? And that's kind of what I was thinking about. Right. And I was realizing as I was watching my family run in circles around me, with kids who were, let's see, 5 and 7 at the time, that they were making me laugh. They would dance, they would sing, they would, do silly things. And that was making me feel better. And that
Yeah.
was making me feel good. And I think, joy is just something that we can drip into our daily lives. Happiness is more of a destination,
Right.
and it's really something that is unattainable in a way, right? If
I
you think
agree.
about it, it's something that feels so far reaching, like, oh, happiness. If I only get this one thing, or if I get this job, or if I get this much money, then I will be happy. But the truth is that with that will come other challenges. And so, like you said, challenges will always exist, but joy is the secret ingredient to really getting through those times.
Right.
So,
Which
especially in the challenges, but
yeah.
even on the normal days, just dripping little joys in and making sure that your movement and your food and, what you do with your day makes you feel good is important.
Yes. And being present and paying attention to what
Mhm.
you're doing and what's going on. I think you talk about that too.
Oh yeah, I have a lot of mindfulness that I,
Yes.
do through my classes and also my coaching.
Yes. So let's talk about your 2 kids. How old are they now?
7 and 9.
Okay. So how do you transfer this down to them, this wisdom to them at that age? Because I think it's really important that the things that we're doing, we can impact our children and the next generation. So how do you do that?
That's a great question. I think it's fundamental to my parenting. I think I've been able to control the way that I act with them through my own personal mindfulness and presence. And it's sort of setting the stage for them through that behavior. But also, it's simple things like we do a lot of breath work.
You
When
do.
my kids are having a little temper tantrum or feeling overwhelmed or anxious,
Yes.
we do breath work.
You do?
Um, yeah, and I simplify it, I'll
Yeah.
just be like belly breaths or a box breath or something that they can, imagine in their mind's eye. We do a lot of breath work and it's like fundamental to getting them to calm down their nervous systems. And I do talk about it with them and tell them this is what mommy does and this is how I'm going to help you with it. And I think that, they're sort of like, "What?" But then when it works,
Yes.
they believe and they keep it in their back pocket as a tool in their toolbox.
Ooh, I love that. Teaching them young.
And also, we do a lot of dance parties.
Yeah. I was gonna
We love
you do
music
that.
in our
You
family, and, that is a really simple way to shift your mind.
Yeah.
When we're at the even at the dinner table and, like, this discussion is stagnant or someone's feeling like they don't wanna eat something that's on their plate, like, we allow for them to get up and dance, and, we'll put a good record on, and it really shifts the mood. So little things like that, right? That it's not necessarily where I'm sitting down and teaching them to meditate in the corner, right? I'm helping them live their life and get through the challenges with little jerks of joy and some of my mindfulness practices.
I love that. The concept of teaching your kids how to breathe. Like, I'm 50, oh my goodness, 54 now, and I just, like, really learned about belly breathing at
Mm.
54, and I feel like, where have I been all my life? I haven't been breathing right and haven't seen the power of that, and I find it so eye-opening, so I love that you're teaching your kids that at such a young age.
Yeah. And the power of the pause. Like these are things that if we had learned, like you said, when we were little, like we would be different people.
Yes, we would.
My nervous system wouldn't have been so ragged for so many
Yeah.
years. And like I said, it really helps with the challenges. So whether it's like they have a test that they're scared about or, something with a new friend and they're nervous to say something, whatever it is that happens in elementary school or, in later years, that they can use these things and have them in their back pocket.
And as they get older, their friends are gonna start to learn them too from
Oh,
them,
yeah.
which you'll see is really cool. That part I saw with my daughter, and it was so cool to see.
That is cool.
That is, it's very cool. So talk to us about how you help your clients. Like, what are the different, because you do a lot of things. So what are some of the things that you do to help your clients, and why do people come to you?
Yeah. So I work in many different ways with clients, everything from one to one clarity coaching, which is like a personalized custom, program based off of where you are and what you're looking to feel and how you want to grow, to small groups. And I do something called the Mindful Book Club, which is basically taking my love of reading and helping to share that with the world. And you can read or listen. And we focus on, those books that you maybe want to read yourself for personal development, but you really never talk about with anyone or you put it back on your shelf. So this is the opportunity to work with me for 6 to 8 weeks in a small group setting with like-hearted people and get to talk about the things that you're reading and bring the words to life. I have another small group that I work with, my business partner, Brianne Cutler, and she's a like and success coach and intuitive. And we have something called joyful alignment. She's be aligned and I'm clear space for joy. So we combine those things together to rebrand into a side business where we work with women to help them feel aligned and live in the flow of life. And we do everything from the things that I talk about. So, nervous system regulation, mindset work, nourishment, and mindful movement. Plus, she adds the human design element. So, there's a piece of that, which is really cool. She's a human design expert. And then I do a lot of different events. So, I'm, a speaker at events, I host my own events, potentially going to be doing a retreat in 2025. And
Yay!
yeah, which will be really cool. Yeah, so those are the main ways to work with me.
Which I love. And I want to join your book club for January, because I can't remember
Yay.
what book you're reading, but what book are you doing for
Well, I
January?
just decided to do 2 books.
Oh, really? Wow. What
Yeah,
2?
so I'm gonna have 2 different groups. So I'm gonna do a new book called
Yep.
Mind Magic,
Okay.
which is by Dr. James Doty, and he's a neuroscientist who
Yep.
explains the power of manifestation in a scientific way, and then also gives you some really cool tips on how to make it more practical in your life and really practice manifesting. in a different way than maybe you would have seen through like a Gabby Bernstein or something like that. So that'll be
Right.
really cool and
Yes.
well timed, I think, for the new year. And then I decided to repeat one of the books that I did last year that was really powerful and that I personally use the teachings from the book in my own life. It's called Worthy by Jamie Kern
Mm,
Lima.
yes. Yep.
And it was a smaller book club last year. And I know a lot of people have wanted to read it and just couldn't make that time. So we're going to do it again and I'm going to repeat. So I'll have two different book clubs running from January to March.
Oh, and both of those are so good. Both those
Yeah.
books are good, and I've seen the author of the first one. He was on, Mel Robbins' podcast.
Yes. I
Yes.
know that's actually the, reason why I decided to read the book was
Yes.
I heard him on Mel Robbins' podcast and I was like, this guy is just so fascinating. And I thought it
Fascinating.
was so amazing to have the different perspective on manifestation where you're bringing in the science part
I agree.
to help people really, some people are skeptical about the power of manifestation. And this really, he does prove that our brain works in a way to manifest based off of the way we think and what we do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating, and he was so vulnerable on it too.
I
Folks, if you
know.
haven't
He
watched
is
it,
in
you
his
gotta.
book as well.
Is he? Okay, so if you haven't watched it, you gotta go watch it on Mel Robbins because he's, like, in tears on her show. He's so vulnerable and raw,
I
and
know.
so you can, like, really connect with him, which is amazing. So I love to ask people who are in the coaching space, what do you do for yourself for continual learning? Because I feel like there's so much to learn. And how do you decide what you're going to learn next? And do you also have a coach?
So my coach is really one of my best friends, Brienne, who
Oh, I
is
love that.
also my business partner because
Yes.
she is a life success coach and intuitive. So it turns out that we, became friends and started to sort of like when we needed it, coach each other, which is
Yes.
really, really cool and a unique way to start a friendship. And it's created this like really deep connection. So it's sometimes you have to see it like, I don't want to be coached right now. I just want to tell you this. Or do you
I'm
have
just,
time to coach me for a few minutes because I really need it? It's sort of
yes.
like you have to put like a disclaimer at the beginning of the
Yes.
conversation. So I
Yes.
would say she's my coach, but in the past I worked with several different people for various different things, to focus on public speaking or to grow my business and expand my brand. So I definitely look to coaches for specific situations and projects in my life.
Yeah. And I think it's important. It's part of how we grow.
But as far as continuing education goes, I think, taking classes, workshops, I sort of look for opportunities and invitations to things that just make my intuition go off and say, oh, that feels right for me. So I'm not necessarily searching for continuing education, but when things come by and I can feel it in my body, I'm like, that's a yes. And then
Yes.
I'll just do it.
Right. Well, and you talk about the yeses and the nos and and the non-negotiables in your
Mhm.
life. And I think that's so important that we have those, especially as working moms, because there's so much to do. And having those boundaries and tapping into your own intuition, I think is so powerful. And I love that you're teaching your clients how to do that and how to tap into that intuition and how to lead by example with boundaries, because boundaries are
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, boundaries are important. We actually just finished reading Stop People Pleasing in Mindful Book Club.
Uh-huh.
And that was one that I think, a lot of people were afraid to read. If I'm being honest,
Of
the club is a
course.
little smaller. And I think it's because people don't necessarily want to admit that we have problems holding boundaries. But it's true. I definitely can fess up to it. I would say a recovering people pleaser, but I still do it
Yeah.
every now and again. And that book was really helpful in helping, really increase awareness of that. But I think my main awareness of that came through therapy and really
Oh,
kind of working through my own things that were happening in my life where I felt overwhelmed and kind of like, sometimes like I just couldn't stop doing things and I didn't know why. And it's because I was telling myself for some reason that, it was important to always be busy and to be a perfectionist and to, and these are beliefs that I had to work through. And I think now that I'm aware of them and rejecting those beliefs and moving forward with new ones that are connected to my mind, body, and heart, then I can hold the boundaries a lot easier,
right.
but I had to do that work to
Yeah.
get to that point, and I had to clear space for joy, as I say, right? So
Yes,
there's
yes,
there is some therapy work in what I do,
yes.
and I take that from my own personal experience and things that I've learned through my coaching and education.
Which are powerful tools. It doesn't just happen overnight. We have to unlearn I love that you
Yes.
said you're recovering. You have to unlearn the
A lot of
behaviors.
unlearning.
Right, exactly. We have to unlearn the behaviors that we've had for so long, and we don't realize how natural and innate they are, so unlearning them is important.
Yeah, and that's where you find, that alignment feeling, which
Yes.
is like I'm living, the way that I want to live. I'm
Yeah,
living in the flow and I'm
in
not
the flow.
forcing.
Yes, right, and you've cleared space. I love cleared space just is so I love your business name and your website because it's just
Thank
so
you.
open and freeing, and it feels like you've opened your heart, you've opened your life to bring in what you want to attract and manifest into your life and how you want to design and build your life. So I think it's so beautifully done.
Oh, thank you. And I love that you use the word design because I really do feel like we are the architects, right? Like
We
we
are.
need to design our days.
Right.
And, I do try to break it down to like daily work, small daily rituals. And
Yes.
how can you design your day and, drip in the joy? Because
Yes.
if we don't design it, then we will be on autopilot, you
Of
know?
course. Right. We
It's
become robots.
especially as parents and,
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and people that work, it's it's so hard to not live on autopilot,
Right.
because we have
Exactly.
a lot to get done. So we
Yeah.
really do need to wake up in a mindful way and say, this is how I want today to run. It
Right.
doesn't mean it's gonna go that way, but what like have the intention
Yes.
for it and to mindfully say, like, these are the three things I want to get done today. And here's
Yes.
how I want to feel today.
Yes. So important how you start your day and your morning routine. What's your morning routine like?
Oh, so I wake up at 6,
Yep.
which isn't super early, but it is before my kids. And I immediately take my noise canceling headphones that are on my bedstand,
Yep.
pop them on my ears, and do a meditation or two. So I take about 20 minutes, and that meditation is guided, and it depends on how I feel that day, what I have going on that day, and I'll choose from my favorites, or maybe
Yep.
even try a new one, and
Yep.
I'll just kind of go into Zen time where I listen to what I need to hear. Then I have a, gratitude practice in there too. And then I take my headphones off. I hang with my dog and let her give me some kisses and snuggles. Get out of bed and then, kind of get ready and start the day with making lunches and all the things that I still do for my
Right.
littles.
Yes.
When I get them out the door, that's really my time between 8:30 and 9 when I start my business day to like
Yeah.
mindfully have my coffee or tea. Don't do much. I just sit there and kind of think. And sometimes that's when I'll prioritize, or go for a little walk and just do something that makes me feel good before my day starts to kind of, flow to whatever I need to do.
Which is so important. I love that you have a morning routine. I think routine and rituals are so important.
So important.
It is. And I feel like everyone I meet that's really into mindset and wellness we all have a routine, and it might evolve and change, and it definitely
Yeah.
does as your kids change and get older and we get older. You have to sort of adjust and prioritize. I used to never be able to start my routine until after my daughter was at school, and then I would start, and now that she's 18, I'm like, oh, I can start now. Like life changes, but having that routine and focusing in some capacity, even if it's just for a short period of time, if you're really rushed, on gratitude and on your intentions, like you said, of the day, and spending time inward for yourself, I think is such an important lesson for people. And just like the baby steps, sometimes people wonder, like, what can I do to start? And I think
Yeah.
that's such a good baby step is starting a morning routine, like you mentioned.
Yeah. I think it's such a good point that it will change and that what I'm doing is not for everyone.
Right,
There's people whose kids are sleeping in their bed and they maybe can't do that. Although I
right.
did talk to someone yesterday and I was recommending the noise canceling headphones because I was like, you
Yeah.
can do that with them sleeping
Right.
right next to you.
Yes.
But yeah, and maybe it is after they leave, or if they're little, young ones and they don't leave the house yet. Like, how can you find some space?
Right.
And really thinking about that. And I work with people. I'm like, really breaking down the blocks that they have to like, I don't have the time. I can't do it. And really helping them think about, well, where is their space? And, or can you clear something out that you don't need? Or, maybe it's not necessarily first thing in the morning for you.
And you know what? We can make the time for things that are priorities. And so it's all about your mindset. And is your inner wellness a priority? Because if it is, you will
Yes.
make the time for it. Those become non negotiables in
Hmm.
life. They
Yeah.
really do, which is so
Yeah.
powerful. So, what's on your bucket list? Like for you personally and for your business, where would you like to go?
I love that you said, where would you like to go? Because travel is like a big part of my life and my
Mm.
personal joy. I think professionally, I would love to do some sort of like international retreat
Ooh,
because
fun.
I'd love to go international. I think actually my personal bucket list would be to live internationally for like a summer,
Yeah.
to go live somewhere and immerse myself and maybe learn a new language and really immerse myself into someone's culture and bring my kids along perhaps and live
Yes.
somewhere for like 3 months. I think that could be really cool.
Very cool.
And then, yeah, I think just going internationally with a group of like-hearted women would be really cool. And just, the challenges associated with that and really like focusing on what brings us joy,
Right.
through travel, as
Yeah.
well as the mindfulness and the breath work and the meditation and the movement and all that.
Right.
The food.
Love, yes, exactly. Nutrition so important. All right, I love that. Well, I follow you and we're connected, so I will definitely be interested in an international retreat. I think it would be so much fun.
It would be.
It
I gotta
would
start here
be.
first though. I
I
used to do retreats a long time ago and I'm
You
gonna try
did.
to bring it back. I think it's something
Good.
that could be really interesting.
I think it is. I think women in particular are craving, and I can't speak for men because I'm not a man, but I think women in particular are craving connection with like-minded women
Yes.
that they don't necessarily know from work or they don't know from their children. And so I think there is a huge space for that for people like yourself to be able to create events to bring like minded women together that wouldn't necessarily meet each other in another way.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm doing with my mindful book club,
Yes.
is like, let's connect through a book, but really we're connecting about something that we care about and we want to talk about things that are, you know, that matter. And it's not just our kids. It's generally not our kids at all.
Yes.
Um, Although parenting sneaks into the conversation, of course, but I think it's nice to have like, we'll meet for like a walk and talk midway and then we meet at the end and we'll do a dinner and it's just so nice to have like something to do that feels mindful that, you're connecting with new people. I definitely seen people make new friends, which is really cool.
Yes.
And I love that. I love connecting people through like mindfulness. I think there's so much opportunity for aligned connections, through these types of events, whether they be small things or bigger things like a retreat.
I agree. I agree. All right. So we're running out of time. I always ask my guests to recommend a book. You've already recommended two from your book club, and actually three because you talked about the book from before. Is there another book that has impacted your life personally that you want to get in there that you want to recommend?
I think the four agreements.
Oh, it's a good one. I have a lot of
The
guests say
four
that.
agreements is something that I live by. And every time
Yes.
I feel a little bit off
Mhm.
in an interaction with someone, whether it be personally or professionally, I go back to the four agreements and I
Yes.
remind myself, like, am I living these? And what can I let go of? I'm sure someone's probably recommended that one before, but it's so good. And it really is something that I live by.
It is so good. You're right. It's been recommended multiple times. But I think what's so powerful about that book is you can go back at any point in time,
Mhm.
just like you said, you can go back and
It's a
you will.
reference book.
It is. It's a nightside book, as someone said on my podcast, and you can go back and you can listen and learn. And depending what your challenges are, or where you are, you will receive a different message from that book, depending on
That's
where you
right.
are at that time. And so, it's a really powerful repeat. It is not a one and done. So that's a great one. Thank you so much. So I will put everything in the show notes. But how can our guests find you?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. I am Julie Vincent is my handle. And then my website is www.clearspaceforjoy.com. And you can email me, julie@clearspaceforjoy.com.
Love it. I will put all those in the show notes. Thank you so much for being a guest. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to share with everybody your wisdom and your brilliance and your approach. And I'm so grateful that we got connected and look forward to doing more with you. So thank you. I hope you have a blessed day.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the House of Germar podcast, where wellness starts within. We appreciate you being a part of our community and hope you felt inspired and motivated by our guest. If you enjoyed this episode, please write us a review and share it with friends. Building our reach on YouTube and Apple Podcasts will help us get closer to our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. You can also follow us on Instagram at House of Germar and sign up to be a part of our monthly inspiration newsletter through our website, houseofgermar.com. If you or someone you know would be a good guest on the show, please reach out to us at podcast@houseofgermar.com. This has been a House of Germar production with your host, Jean Collins. Thank you for joining our house.